Welcome to I Spit on Your podcast, where we like to start anew every couple of months. I'm your humble host, Sean. With me, as always, is our educated, handsome merman, Justin. And new to the podcast is my cousin, Nate. Unfortunately, that black void is Tyler's seat because he decided not to join us. Not sure why, not sure what's going on, but hopefully he will sooner or later. This time we decided we're going to do things a little bit differently. Other than this episode, which we agreed would be Dr. Sleep, the three of us at the end of each episode are going to post a video that we would like to review. We'll post it in the Facebook group and as a poll. Whichever video wins, that's the video that we'll do the next week. Recordings will probably happen in the middle of the week, and new videos should be posted Sundays. If you're new to this podcast, I don't like anything. Justin spent his entire education knowing everything about this, and Nate just likes to vape and look at himself on the camera. Anyway, like I said a couple minutes ago, we decided that we were going to watch Dr. Sleep, and we're going to let Nate take it away. We're going to pop his cherry immediately and uncomfortably. So he's going to go ahead and give you all the rundown, and then we're going to just shit on this movie. Enjoy.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate Sean and Justin allowing me to jump on this, and we really do hope that Tyler makes his way back to us at some point here. So let's get this started off right. So we are going to be reviewing the movie Dr. Sleep today, like Sean has mentioned. And what Dr. Sleep is about is it takes place after the events of the original Shining movie. It follows Danny Torrance and his mother at the beginning, and then slowly moves into Danny's spiral into alcoholism and his eventual recovery. And during that process, he is contacted by a little girl named Abra, and they'd start developing a relationship. And unbeknownst to them, there's a group of people who also have what they call the Shining, which is abilities that these people are able to have. And this group of people, I believe they're called the Knots, if I'm not mistaken. They eat other people's shine. And they end up wanting to track down Abra because Abra shows to be a super powerful Shining user. So the movie basically follows that story along the lines. There is a book to it, which I don't think any of us have actually read. So we all went into this movie a little blind, expecting a little too much. So the movie ends up following Abra as she tries to avoid capture by this group of people who are after her to eat her. And Danny comes along to help save the day. So we want to get right into our reviews here. Sean, Justin, what were your guys' initial thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Justin.
I had a lot of high hopes for this, and unfortunately didn't really live up to the standard I had created in my mind for it, because I think The Shining's really good. Whether Stephen King likes it or not, I enjoy it, but I don't know, there's just something about this that doesn't really live up to The Shining. It just all seems very rushed and paced poorly, and the story itself is very lacking, at least in my opinion.
Wow, harsh criticism coming from you. Christ.
I know, surprising, right?
I'm shocked right now. I almost don't know what to say.
I mean, to be honest, I felt the same way after my first watch through of it. I was kind of like, oh, that was nothing what I was expecting. I felt like it really didn't relate to the original Shining at all, and it was just it's completely different story, and they just kind of went way off with it, and you know, I do agree with him. It did feel very rushed at certain parts and stuff. You know, it just kind of, I don't know, it just wasn't really what I was expecting. You know, from the original trailers. You know, from the original trailer, it was like, oh, shit, it's gonna be creepy as shit, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's like a couple creepy scenes, and then it was just kind of, you know, all right, let's figure out what the hell's going on here. The whole rest of the movie, because they kind of, I felt they left a lot of stuff like just up in the air.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. When I first saw it, watching some of it, you know, maybe midway through the movie, I kept thinking like, was I supposed to read the book before watching this? Just because I felt like there was a lot of stuff that was happening and we weren't told, or I had no idea why or how it was happening. So I was like often confused. And then Mike Flanagan, you know, he's a hell of a director, especially lately with horror. Like he's been on absolute fire. And I think that he really like he jumped in the deep end and he really tried to swim, but he did end up sinking just because he tried to pull off too much and he couldn't cover all of it. So things that happened, he would explain some of them, but others just like fell through the cracks. And then, you know, I won't spoil anything right now, but I'll just say like Rose the Hat for me, she was just a complete letdown for a villain. Especially after knowing what, you know, the original Shining was and how grand and evil, you know, things could happen in this universe, to then bring it here and to kind of experience her from that opening scene where she's like, holy shit, and brutal. And then as the movie goes on, she just is another person, you know. I almost feel like this isn't a horror movie, it's like a fantasy adventure movie, just because, you know, none of it seemed horror elements to me personally.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. Like at first, like you know, you see that first opening scene where you know Rose is sitting there by the water with the the sunflowers and stuff, and then the little girl Violet comes up and she's all friendly and stuff. And you kind of get that like, oh, she's a little sinister, and then all of a sudden, all the rest of them start showing up, and you kind of like, oh shit, it's actually kind of creepy because they kind of just pop up and they're just standing there. So you kind of get that really good creepy opening vibe from it, and that was actually one of the things that I genuinely loved about the movie, especially during the extended cut. Where they actually show Violet's mom kind of like looking around for her as the vans are driving off with her. Like after my original watch through, I didn't watch the extended cut, so I didn't get to see that scene. So after I saw that, I was like, all right, that actually made the scene a little bit better, and I thought it was going to set the tone of the movie a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It did, because after that, it kind of, you see a few creepy things from when they could do the flashback to the hotel, and then other than that, it kind of just stopped being creepy, stopped being horror. I would say about after a third of the way through the movie. I think the last truly creepy scene was when Dan was laying in his bed right after he got into New Hampshire there.
Yeah.
And that girl and the baby were in the bed with him. That I feel like was the last creepy scene in the movie. And that was very, very early on in the movie, because you got to remember, this was a long movie.
So yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that opening scene I thought was really good too. Establishing that danger and kind of mythical property of that group. And even though you don't really see what happens, what they do to the kid, Rose heavily implies it when she pulls the violet out of her hat and eats it, and the girl says, oh, we don't eat flowers, and she says, yes, we do. We eat the flowers. They're violets, just like you. Implying, like she's going to eat this child, basically, but doesn't show it on screen at all. So I thought that was actually really well done. Basically telling you what happened without showing you what happened.
Yeah, you kind of get that vibe where you think that they actually ate her, like they're cannibals. So I was kind of sitting there being like, oh, this is going to be, one of those, crazy types of movies. And then it got into they were just eating the steam, which was like, all right, that's okay. I mean, I get it. But based off of that opening scene, it was really like, are these people worse than what we're anticipating here? And then it kind of was like, yeah, they're bad, but like, yeah, that opening scene was a little misleading after you kind of think about it. Still great though. I still thought it was, cinematically it was beautiful. I thought, it did set a good tone for the, at least the first part of the movie. But one thing I do want to bring up is the reenactments from when Danny was a kid with his mother, and like even I wish they had Jack Nicholson back in it. That's one thing I really wish they would have done for the bar scene when they do go back at the end there. But the reenactments, I did want to bring that up because I thought they did a great job on recasting all of them and getting actors that looked just like them and even sounded like them. And I generally enjoyed when they would do the flashbacks of those because it was just, I thought they did that really well. So it was kind of good they had those subtle nods back to the original movie, and they did, because it is so much further in the future. I think they did a good job in how they recasted everybody.
Something that I think that was really cool, but also hurt the movie in the long run, was how they made everybody's timeline the same. They were down in the 80s with Rose the Hat in the beginning, and then it showed a young Danny and his mom and how he was kind of adjusting to life after the events of The Shining. And then it moved forward a little bit, and Rose the Hat's doing her thing still, and Danny's, an alcoholic, and I assume a druggie as well. His life is spiraling down. And then you get introduced to the new character, Abra, and she's a little baby, or not a little baby, I'm sorry, like a little kid. And you learn that she has powers as well. And then, it fast forwards a little bit later after he goes to New Hampshire, where he's now clean and sober. Abra's more of a teenager. Rose the Hat is, older again. And I really appreciate that they kept everybody's timeline together and showed you where they were in the world, because these were the stories that we were following. But at the same time, they fucking ruined this movie by doing that. Because who the fuck is Rose the Hat? How did she get the way she is? Who's her crew? How the fuck did they become who they are? What is this? Like, you're just giving me a villain and nothing else. And that really pissed me off. I hate when you don't know anything, but you want me to be invested in her. And then Danny, what happened to him as a child and as a teenager? And how was his growing up? What was his relationship like with his mom? What I feel like we can assume we know what the events were that made him spiral out of control. But at what point in time did he let loose and spiral out of control? Because, he kind of seemed like he had it somewhat together when he found out that he could trap the ghosts in those boxes. But then all of a sudden he's just an alcoholic druggie. And then Abra, how does she know how to use her power? How is she so good with it? How, at such a young age, how is she so amazing at doing this thing that the last child that we saw have it, Danny, it freaked him the fuck out. He had no clue what was going on. So you're giving me these things and you just want me to just go with you there. But there's no backstory, there's no explanation, there's no lead up, there's no build up. And that's where it falls apart. There's no backbone. It's just face value and that's it. And that hurts. That sucks for me.
No, I agree with you on that. One of the things that really upset me about the movie and kind of ruined it was how did Danny's life spiral out of control so badly? Because like you said, when Dick came back and was talking to him there on the park bench there, which was another perfect recasting, by the way. I'm going to throw that out there. I'm probably going to talk about that a lot because I absolutely love the recastings. But when he came back and was talking to him, gave him that box, and then he went, told him, do what you have to do to make that box in your head. And then, they show that scene where they're back at, their house, and he goes, him and his mom are sitting on the couch watching Looney Tunes, and then, he kind of just gets up and walks back into the bathroom where, the bathtub ghost was, and pissed himself in the hallway earlier in the movie, and then he just walks in there and walks out like it's nothing. So you kind of, from there, you're kind of like, well, it seems like he's got his shit together here a little bit now that he's figured this trick out, and that, he should be able to manage more. And then next thing you know, you see him and he's this drunken piece of shit, homeless guy whose life is completely spiraled out. It's like, I feel like they could have dropped some scenes in there that would have hinted, his life spiraling out of control. Like, it would have had to have happened, in his teens or something, you would think, right? His developmental years, shit goes wrong, and then maybe showed, his early 20s. It's done like brief scenes. They didn't have to do like long extended scenes to make the movie long. They just had to do, short little, those short little scenes in between, which would have just given a little bit more depth to how he got like that, and what led to him, becoming sober 8 years later. What led him, to all of that. I just felt like it was very lame that they just kind of like, oh yeah, he was cool as a kid, and then next thing you know, he's just this piece of shit who left a mother and her baby to die in an apartment, and then he moved out of state. It's kind of just like, what the fuck was that? Why wouldn't you give a little bit more explanation to how his life fell apart like that? And that just, to me, that just irked me, and I really wish they did that with just about every other character in the movie too. It was just a quick, boom, here's this character, boom, here's this character, this person's this person's that, like, up to you, fuck it, we don't care. You figure out what the story is. And this is coming from somebody who hasn't read the book. Like, the book might have more detail on who these people are. This might not be 100% true to the book. So, but from somebody who just watched the movie, these were kind of just things where I was just like, why wouldn't you give a little bit more of an explanation to this? I also felt like just certain scenes could have been dragged out more too. Like one scene that bugs me a lot was the scene where they turned Snakebite Andy there on the beach, and then they show her waking up and she just gives her a brief explanation of what happens, and then the scene ends. Like, I really felt like they should have went more in depth on what was, the purpose of that, and like what actually happened. They're kind of just like, yeah, he died. You're dead now, basically, and then like that's it. And then they just went on to a whole nother scene. I wish they would have explained more like what they were and why they wanted to be like that. I guess it's just to live forever or live long, but that kind of scenes like that, just, I feel like they should have dragged them out a little bit more.
Yeah, they bounced back and forth between too many things when they could have just kept them together and made them one longer scene, as opposed to bouncing between the three characters over the same concept of what was happening.
Yeah. My thing with Snakebite Andy was, how did they find her, and how did they decide who they wanted to bring into their group and who they did not want to bring into their group?
Because that I'm going to interrupt you, because they did kind of explain that. As Rose can kind of find and detect these, people who shine.
Mm-hmm.
They show her doing that. That's how they found. They found Abby a different way, but that's how they've been tracking these kids down. Like, the kid that, number 19, the baseball kid that they killed there. I assume that's kind of how they tracked her down. And then when they're in the trailer after they got Snakebite Andy back, they told her, you're a pusher. And we haven't had a pusher in the, around here in a while. So that's why they wanted to turn her. So they had her power, 'cause she's not too powerful, but she's powerful enough to be able to get whatever she wants, because her, you saw her power was, to be able to control. From my understanding, she can only control men. Because it didn't seem to work on girls. The only other girl she tried it on was Rose, and it's either only works on men or Rose was just too powerful for it to work on. That's my explanation for that.
While you're not wrong, if you remember though, Crow Daddy was the one that was in the movie theater that found Andy, and Rose was like, "What are we doing here? What's going on?" So she had no idea what was going on. Crow Daddy is the one that did all the homework and research on her.
That's one thing I also wanted to bring up. What was Crow Daddy's power? Because they all seem to kind of have their own different powers.
Yeah.
It was Crow Daddy's power, that he had the ability to um, track down these other people who shine. Like, was that his ability? To detect others. Or what was it? Because they showed nothing on his powers, like, at all.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they didn't explain anybody's powers. They kind of just said, "Oh, yep, they can do this." Like when,
Well, that's what I'm talking about. They did for him, like, out of all the characters, he was one of the more important and more, influential characters, I guess you could say, on that part. And one of the higher up into that group, but you saw nothing of what his powers were.
right.
And I felt for somebody who had as much of an opinion as he did, and was in the movie as much as he did. It's kind of like, well, what are your powers?
Mm-hmm.
And I was really upset with his character because I generally liked his character. And one scene I was really upset with was when he killed the Abra's dad.
Mm-hmm.
That scene drove me nuts because I was like sitting there, and I kind of like the non-extended cut version of that scene better, because you just kind of see him come up behind her and stab her with the needle, and then it just goes and shows him walking out of the house, and then you see the dad's body.
Mm.
And I didn't like how in the extended cut it showed the dad kind of come out and he had the knife, and then Crow Daddy just walked towards him, and it was like, I've always wanted to meet the chef, and then next thing you know, he's walking out of the house and the dad's dead. Like, they could have shown, like, either was it a struggle or did he walk up and use his abilities to make the dad lower his guard and he stabbed him.
Right.
Well, I was kind of just like, well, if you're going to show that, why wouldn't you go a little more detailed with the scene? I mean, this is an extended cut. I'd assume it's a Stephen King movie, so I would imagine it had a good budget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you couldn't show the struggle between those two, or if there was a struggle. It didn't seem like there was, so it'd kind of just be cool if they went more in depth with that. And that's just, I don't know, that shit just irked me like no tomorrow.
I mean, that's how the whole movie seemed to be, though. Like I said earlier, there was just face value, no backbone, no meat to it. So you kind of just had to be like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing, or that's what we're doing. When Danny takes over Abra, and all of a sudden he, triggers his inner Obi-Wan and fucking force turns the steering wheel so the car crashes,
which that was a phenomenal scene. I absolutely love that scene.
But when did we start being able to do that? Like, when did this start happening?
Yeah, they never really, if you really think about it, they never really told you what Danny's powers were. Like, was his, one of the notes I have here is, was his ability to, alter people's thoughts or control people's thoughts. That's why when he was, if you notice when he was working in that nursing home, like, you would be telling them, you wouldn't know the person, but he'd be telling them, like, the older person that's dying there, like, good memories of them. Like, he talked to the one older guy and told him about, made him taste his blueberries that his mother, grew for him. And then he, started talking about, him being in his workshop, playing, with the radio playing, and they started singing that song. Like, is that I was thinking, was that what his ability was? Was he more of like it was more like a telepathy thing, where he was just able to get, read people's minds and just get in there and just, alter their thoughts so they can, I can't. They didn't really get into it because they just showed him using his ability to kind of ease these older people to sleep. That but other than that, they didn't really touch on it. And then the scene where he did take control of the wheel, that was another scene. It was like, well, when the hell was he able to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene when they're at the hotel there with Rose, and that's the only other display of his power. And all they did was trap her inside it. They're inside his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, what was that? Why? Like, why do you not explain what his powers were? You know, they showed Abra's powers like in depth. She's the only one who like had any any story like kind of driven towards her powers on what her capabilities are. Everybody else kind of is like, yeah, this is this person, this is that person. They can do this, they can do that. You know, we don't really know how strong anybody is, but you'll figure it out. That's just that's what I got from the movie. It's just very
The
unexplained. That's all I could really say.
the problem that I had with Abra though is that she is such a little girl, but somehow she's so strong. And how does she know how to use her powers? How is she so aware and in tune with them so early? And how is she beating Rose the Hat like she's fucking nothing? You know, Rose the Hat is supposed to be our big bad of this movie, and she's getting, tossed around like nothing from this fucking teenage girl, basically. I think that it would have been very helpful for the movie and for at least me to accept it more if there were scenes of Danny actually training her or educating her or showing her and like doing this stuff. Like, don't imply it or kind of just, oh yeah, well, blah blah blah. No, man, fucking tell me. Like, I'm here to see your story, so tell me your story.
Yeah.
There's no need for there to be room for me to put in, oh, maybe this happened or maybe that happened, because that creates conflict or problems. You wanted to tell me a story, then tell me the story. And that's the problem with this, is there's no story that's fully told. I'm sorry. It's just kind of like glossed over more. This is like basically just the Wikipedia. We just watched the Wikipedia notes of the Stephen King book.
Yeah, the hot notes.
Yeah, he was just like, well, this and this are the key things, so there you go. You'll like that, and we're out. And it's like, well, what the fuck? No, we're not. If I was casually watching this movie, yeah, it'd be a cool movie. The budget was spent great. The movie does look very appealing and nice. The acting is very well done. But when I'm wanting to, like, really get connected into the story, I'm kind of sitting here like, well, wait a minute, what the fuck? How are we just going to skip this and gloss over that and what happened there? And all of a sudden the movie's going along, and I'm still back trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
don't get me wrong by anything that I'm saying. I still think it's a phenomenal movie. I thought it was a great movie. It was just lacking on the story side, which is keeping it from being, one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
But there were just too many problems with it. Like, if I was just, like you said, casually watching this movie and, I wasn't, and I'm not us who have to overanalyze every little fucking thing on the face of the planet, I would have probably sat there and said this is probably one of the best movies I've ever seen. But, like, because there's just so many I would say plot holes and just holes in the movie in general where just things just fall through and prevent it from actually being as good as it should have been. I feel like they aimed it more at being an action film over a horror film, like it should have been, like the original Shining.
Right.
Kept, they advertised it like it was going to be in the same genre, and then it's kind of just didn't follow through on it, in my opinion.
What are you thinking, Mermander?
Nothing in particular. I just think, like, kind of like we've gone on. There's just so many holes in it. Like we've mentioned, Danny, his strength and power. I mean, he went so long without using his Shining, and all of a sudden he's extremely powerful again. And it doesn't make any sense why he and Abra are linked at all. For to suddenly, she screams and he wakes up. They're suddenly just linked. And then when you were talking about that scene where she overpowers Rose, I don't understand why her hair turned blue and her eyes disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was so stupid looking.
I mean, I thought she looked creepy like that, but like I agree with you. It was just kind of just dumb looking.
Yeah, it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And they just made all the villains of the movie seem so weak in general. I mean, you have this gigantic group of them, and 90% of them die from one bullet. They manage to kill one guy back in return, and then Rose dies, not even from Abra or Danny. It's from the things locked in the Overlook Hotel, which is kind of funny. It's like the actual Shining itself is what beats this. It's the words I'm trying to say are like, it's funny how the other things locked in Danny's mind or what takes her over is like, it's kind of humorous to me, as in like how the actual Shining itself overpowers on Dr. Sleep in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had to rely on the old shit to finish things off.
I feel like that whole fight scene led up to that, like the entire time. Like I felt that trick that Dick taught him with the box. That did ultimately, I guess you could say that ultimately saved his life, but also ultimately led to his demise, because he had to eventually let those ghosts out, which. I feel like he could have put up a much better fight against Rose. I mean, I can't imagine she was like a superhuman. I mean, she has her powers, but I don't think she could have physically overpowered him unless there's something I was missing there.
Yeah, I mean, I said that box scene in the beginning when Dick is teaching him about the boxes is probably the most important scene in the entire movie. And it was kind of annoying that he told him about it, and then he immediately learns how to do it and locks up the bath lady, as opposed to him trying to figure out how to do. I mean, he trapped all of those people in boxes, and you got like 2 seconds of him locking one up with no detail or anything, when it was arguably the most important thing he did in his entire life was locking those people in the box.
Yeah, I did like when he did when Dick returned for the final time there and saw him, and told him he needed to help Abra out. I do like how he did expand on, he's like, you still seeing those ghosts? And he's like, no, not in years. He's like, I actually locked up so-and-so. I can't remember the guy, the guy that's, covered in confetti and blood. And he's like, awesome party or whatever he says there. He brings that up and he's like, that's the last guy I locked up. I wish they would have been, that's something that they could have added into those scenes that we were talking about earlier, where they should have done like someone is like, teenage and young adulthood. They should have used scenes like that to kind of give you a little more detail on what happened with those.
I think the movie wanted us to be like, oh, Abra's young and strong, and because they don't have as much shine to feed off of, that's why they're easily defeated and weaker. But if you go through that logic, then all of the creatures, all the ghosts trapped in Danny's head, which have not eaten for years and which have been trapped away, and you're like, oh yeah, they're hungry. Wouldn't they be just as weak? Like, wouldn't Rose have been able to at least fight some of them off or fight some of them back or anything? Like, she took either 2 or 3 canisters full of shine. So you'd think that she'd be so incredibly powerful. And that whole final lead-up battle was just kind of a bullshit letdown. The shootout was more exciting than that shit.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that was our thoughts on the movie Dr. Sleep. It is time for us to give our final thoughts. We're going to start off with Justin. What were your final thoughts on the movie?
So I think although it was really enjoyable for the most part, like I liked watching it, and I've said before in the past, this is kind of like a background movie almost, one you can just kind of throw on and kind of zone out, and you're not really gonna miss a whole lot. Like it was enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it. Like I mentioned earlier, it feels really rushed and choppy and lacking for the most part. And like even the second time I watched it, really didn't get invested into what was happening until like an hour into the movie. Until basically it was until the baseball boy dies, basically. Which, fun fact, I don't know if either of you realize this, the original Danny has a cameo in this movie as the baseball boy's dad is the original Danny from The Shining.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, guy with the goatee. That's the original Danny Torrance.
Oh, shit.
Oh, I didn't know that's that.
Yeah, you would never know by looking at him. I was reading something about the extended cut, I was looking at the credits list and I saw it, and I was like, no shit. So I had to look up where he was. But anyways, besides that point, yeah, it just feels rushed and doesn't feel like it has a whole lot of meat and potatoes to it. Honestly, the parts I enjoyed the most were all the callbacks to The Shining. Like, I enjoyed the extended director's cut more because there was more Shining scenes. A lot of the landscape shots are reminiscent of the original Shining. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or not, but when Danny's interviewing with the guy at the nursing home, what happened?
Did we lose Sean?
No, he's there. He's like Drax. He's so still and quiet, he's invisible.
Oh.
I'll make sure to move around every so often.
There we go.
All right, Sean, what were your thoughts? Oh, he's not done.
Oh, you're not done? Oh, continue.
No, I got a little bit more. Like I was saying, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the scene where Danny's interviewing with the nursing home guy is like almost identical to when Jack is interviewing in the Overlook Hotel. Like, the room colors painted the same, the nameplate is identical. It's like made to look exactly like that scene. As soon as I saw the color on the walls, it's like, wait a minute, I recognize this room. So that was cool. Like, the callbacks to The Shining in general were really cool, and the Overlook scene itself was probably my favorite. But it just never really had that real tension that The Shining had. It never really seemed like anyone was in any danger or that anything bad was going to happen, or I didn't feel uneasy. Like, I felt like the whole time I knew, okay, Danny and Abra are going to win. Like, whatever happens is going to happen. I'm not concerned about the steam suckers, as I call them. They were just really boring and uneventful and really lacking in power. And the one who had the most power, the Viper, was hardly ever used. So with that, it was just like, I don't know. It just really kind of let me down. But I guess if I have to give it an overall grade, I'm going to say a 6.5, I guess. Just because I liked all the Shining stuff that it threw in there, but like the plot was obviously the biggest problem. But it was still really fun to watch and had some really good like cinematic stuff done, which, as Sean likes to hint at, holds a lot of brownie points in my book.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would have to say. So Sean, why don't you tell us what you thought?
Well, I thought that I was going to watch a horror movie, and then I ended up just watching some fucking fantasy adventure about a 30-year-old guy and some teenage girl. I don't know, like, I thought the movie started off kind of cool with the whole brutality of killing a kid. I was really like, here we go, this is about to be some cool shit. And then it kind of lost me a little bit. And then it brought me back once they killed the little baseball boy, because, again, brutal, like, vicious, going at it. I'm like, okay, here we fucking go. Like, let's get it. And then they just kind of lost it for me again. The movie just seemed like it was like a real boring roller coaster. Like, you had a couple cool hills and the rest of it was just fucking flat. And that also could be because, I didn't read the book. We didn't read the book. So maybe it was intended to be this way. But from my thoughts of what it was going to be, how The Shining was, the build up for it, all the anticipation, I was let down. This is a horror group. I wanted to see a horror movie. I didn't see a horror movie. I will say, to give them credit, that I do think that the movie was beautiful. I really think that the locations were good. The CGI wasn't fidgety or bullshit. I think that everything kind of flowed well, visually on the screen. But there's more to just the face. There's no meat, there's no bones, there's nothing to keep me into it. I found myself more distracted than anything. So if I have to give this horror movie a grade, it'd be like a 2.5 out of 10.
Damn.
Just because it's not a horror movie. Like, if we were saying, hey, let's just, watch a random fucking movie, Adventure Time, then I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, like maybe 5 or 6 out of 10. But the plot holes are just so apparent. This movie is just so. This movie is Swiss cheese, and I hate Swiss cheese. So fuck this movie and fuck your 6.5 for it. So
that was a little fucking harsh, Sean. Jesus Christ. I guess what I would have to say about the movie. I agree with Justin. I thought the movie was a very enjoyable movie. I would watch it again and again, just because visually it was pleasing to watch. I also agree with Sean on the fact that I thought I was getting myself into a horror movie, and it turned out that I was just watching something completely different. I mean, a fantasy movie is a good way to put it. It kind of went from starting off as being this really brutal movie when them killing that Violet girl. And I was like, I thought that was really setting the tone of the movie. I was like, this is either going to be really violent or this is going to be really like psychological. And then it ended up just kind of falling flat on all those aspects and just being, nothing but, empty promises. I was expecting to see more of the ghosts and more of what are these abilities and what makes these people so dangerous, and they kind of just turned it into this whole we got to protect this girl movie, and to me that just ruined it on all aspects. But I shouldn't say on all aspects. It ruined the aspect of it being a horror movie for me. And just turn it into just being like I'm watching like a John Wick movie or something, something like what Justin said, where I could just kind of turn it on in the background and like I can walk away for 10 minutes and come back and not have missed a single thing, not have missed any part of the story, not have missed anything that it would really advance the story. And to me, it just kind of felt pretty boring. Things I did like about the movie though is I did love the reenactments. I'm going to repeat that over and over again. I loved the people that cast for it, and I loved the way everything was just done for those reenactments, or with the recasts. Dick was probably my favorite one out of all of them. I think the guy that they I can't remember his name right now. They cast to play him. I think he played the character perfectly. And he just, to me, out of everybody in the whole movie, he was the only one that actually was like a fun or a good character to see on screen. Like when you pop on, I'd be like, oh, this guy, thank you. Finally, something to get me back into the movie, because I found myself kind of just falling off of it at certain points. Other things I did like, I mean, the opening scene is one thing definitely. I did like how they kind of expanded the I'm going to call it like the universe of The Shining. Instead of it just kind of being like, oh, this is a scary hotel movie, they kind of turned it more into being like, no, this is a lot deeper. This world is a lot deeper, and the powers are real. And it kind of gave me a new perspective on the old movie, because now it's like, okay, this was, hotel is messed up, but this movie gave you reasons on why it was so messed up for Danny to be there. My rating for it, horror movie wise, like Sean, I'm going to give it a 4 for being a horror movie, just for the certain aspects and the certain scenes of brutality in it. And then for a regular movie, I'd probably give it like a 5.5, maybe a 6. So I mean, don't fuck the movie, but you know, I would say go see it. You know, see it if you could, but I wouldn't go out of your way to see it.
If you had to give it one number, what would you give it?
Don't fuck the movie.
What was that?
If you had to give it one number, what would you give it?
If I had to give it one number, I'd probably say 4.5.
Okay. I just have to remake the new standings. That's why I asked. Sean said 2. Go figure.
That was our review for Dr. Sleep. You can either see it or don't. It doesn't really matter to us. Next week, we are taking the week off because Justin, with his education, decided we were going to have our poll up for a week, give us all time to watch the movie, and then every 2 weeks we would be posting our video. Nate's got a kid. I got this thing. Justin might have a girlfriend. I don't know. We haven't talked in a while. So we're kind of busy lately with our schedule. But the movies that we're going to be putting up, Nate wants to go hard and go with Hereditary. Justin's really got a thing for Ginger Snaps, seeing as how we couldn't do it. And it's fucking Valentine's Day, so my movie's Valentine.
That was the movie I was going to pick before.
Are you serious?
Yeah, thank you. You said it. And as soon as you said Valentine's Day, I was like, that was it.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I have it on Vudu so that we can watch it too.
I saw it. I have it on DVD because I have a soft spot for David Boreanaz in my heart.
Oh my God. So give us your thoughts on Dr. Sleep. Tell us what you thought, what you liked, what you didn't like. If you disagree or agree with any of us, we're very open to comments and feedback. Give us a like on YouTube. Join our Facebook group. We're very nice people. I know I don't sound like it, but we really do like more people. So come in with all the opinions and thoughts that you have. Have a great day. Watch our movies and support our videos.